Hey, Shabbat, 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 Shalom. Shabbat, Shalom. Hey, Shabbat, Shalom. Hey, Shabbat, 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 Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Are we live? We are live. My name is Rabbi Jesse Mordechai Chern, and I am blessed and honored to be the rabbi of this incredible shul, Temple Beth David. We are located in Metro Atlanta, and we are a URJ-affiliated congregation. It is Shabbat for a little bit longer, but we're going to have our Havdalah ceremony. And I'm so blessed and honored because I have some of the mishpacha, some of my family here. The Rebbitzin is here with us. Little Reina Esther is running around. We're going to have our brief Havdalah ceremony, and then we're going to transition right into Simchat Torah. And we're going to learn. We have a whole table of, when I was younger, when I was in grade school, one of my favorite activities was you bring something into the class, show and tell. So you are now, all of you, everyone is invited into the Sunrise Sanctuary here to celebrate with us Simchat Torah, the joy of Torah, and Reina Esther has her Torah. We're blessed and honored because we also have our Vice President with us, the streaming specialist who is the master of everything. Vice President Judy Kern is with us to assist us. So please, we also have the Rebbitzin that will also be on the computer to ask questions, to pose conversations, and to get everyone excited to learn and study about the Torah. So now we're going to strike the match and start. It's the 22nd here, the 22nd of Tishrei. It is October 10th, 2020. And now our Havdalah candle is lit, or it is in the process of being lit. So we're going to get ready. And so when we think about the Havdalah service, the word itself, Havdalah, means a separation. Because we're transitioning. It's a Havdalah and Yom Tov. It's a Simcha. It's a holiday. So we're going to be having our service and transitioning from Shabbat into a special holiday of Simchat Torah, the joy of Torah. So we have our grape juice, our spices, bisamim, and our Havdalah candle.
הנה על ישועתי אפתח ולא אפחד, כי עזי וזמרתיה אדוני ויהי לי ישועה. ושפתם מים בששון ממענה הישועה. לאדוני ישועה עמך ברכתך סלה. אדוני צבאות עמנו משגב לנו אל יעקב סלה. אדוני צבאות אשר דם בוטח בך. אדוני הושיע מלך יעננו ויום קוראנו.
Everyone all together, let us be the light unto all the nations.
ליהודים הייתה אורה ושמחה וששון ויקר, כן תהיה לנו כוס ישועות אשא, ובשם אדוני אקרא.
And now we have Savri, Maranan, Rabbanan, Rabboisai. We have our grape juice. But before we do the blessing over the fruit of the vine, we need everyone's help. Are you ready? Yes, because now we have the lies.
אחד, שתיים, שלוש. לי, 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 ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא פרי הגפן בורא פרי הגפן אמן לי 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 ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא מיני וסמים בורא מיני וסמים אמן לי 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 ברוך אתה אדוני אלוהינו מלך העולם בורא מאורי האש בורא מאורי האש אמן לי 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 lai, 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 lai. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Hamavdil ben kodesh lechol, ben or lechoshech, ben Yisrael le'amim, ben yom hashvi'i, sheshet yamei ha'maaseh. Baruch atah Adonai, hamavdil ben kodesh lechol. Amen. Shavua tov, 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 Shavua tov.
And now we have a visitor. Who is the visitor? The visitor is
Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hanavi. Eliyahu Hatishbi. Eliyahu, Eliyahu, Eliyahu Agiladi. Bimera v'yameinu yavo aleinu. Moshiach ben David. Moshiach ben David. Chag
Chag
Sameach.
Sameach, Shavua Tov. It is the incredible holiday. I have a speaker here that I think I might have to turn off or turn down. I get close to it, so all of a sudden I'm playing a game here. I got to keep my distance. But the Rebbitzin is going to start with the computer. We're going to log on to the YouTube. We're blessed. Again, we have all of the cameras. Hopefully you can see me. So traditionally now with Simchat Torah starts now. It starts tonight. It goes till tomorrow. And when we think about this holiday of Simchat Torah, it's the joy of the Torah. We finish. Here, today we read all about Shmini Atzeret. We spoke about Sukkot, Hoshana Rabbah, and now we're going to really read. Today we're going to have I'll have an Aliyah, I'll be called to the Torah, and we're going to read the last Torah portion. And so the last Torah portion is, we spoke about Ha'azinu, which I quickly saw in the Torah, but V'zot HaBracha. V'zot HaBracha. So we'll talk about V'zot HaBracha, the last Torah portion in the fifth book, the final book, Deuteronomy, Devarim, and then also in this Sefer Torah, in this Torah, we have Sefer Bereshit. So we'll talk about all those things. We have some little Torah, Torah here, but we bring the Torahs out of the ark. Clearly, they're out of the ark. We have them covered here in a talit. But I wanted to just share with you some of the things when we bring out the Torah. What does it look like? So the Rebbitzins here, we're going to sing some songs. But do you have any questions, concerns, comments? What is the Torah? So when we think about the items on the Torah, think about here at Temple Beth David, we're blessed. We have 2 Sifrei Torah, 2 Torah scrolls. But I'm sure maybe if you've seen other congregations,
Be careful with this door.
Some have 2, some have 10, some have many different Torah scrolls. So here, when we bring out the Torah is dressed. You say, Rabbi, the Torah is dressed? Yes, we dress the Torah. Now, we dress the Torah, again, as I mentioned, the Torahs that we have here at our shul are kind of an Ashkenazi style of Torah. So that means, again, we'll talk about the items but the items and how it's laid down, how we use it. But when the Torah comes out, it has noise, it has bells, it has pomegranates. And why? Because we want to make sure that we know the Torah is there. Because also the Kohanim, the priests, they had bells on their clothing. So they know we get ready, we stand up. So this is the keter, the crowns of the Torah. This really, and when we think about the keter, the crown, this is really the crown. So when we think about the keter, so we know the Torah is coming out. So the Torah has a crown. And the crown always is hopefully going to be beautiful, because we want to make sure the Torah is our most important object that's what makes a shul, a temple, a synagogue. That's what makes it really a holy place, is the svarim, the books, but really the Torah. So we have the Keter Torah, the crowns, and the crowns, we'll talk about where they go. And then also we have, the next thing is the ephod. The ephod. Now the ephod is the breastplate. Now again, who wears the breastplate? The priest, the high priest used to wear, and they would have the shoham, all of the stones. You could see that the stones would be on the breastplate. But here we have the breastplate, and again, so it has, again, the lions of Judah here. It also has in the middle here, some Hebrew letters that represent the Torah, and inside of this little door here, the Torah. So we have all different types of things here.
And Rabbi, the Aseret HaDibrot.
And this one has the Aseret HaDibrot here. So again, what are the Aseret HaDibrot? The 10 utterance. The first one, Ani Adonai Elohecha. Right? I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt in order to be your God. So again, we have the Aseret HaDibrot. And a lot of times you'll see the Aseret HaDibrot depicted in the shul. Again, one of the 10 commandments we have is to have no depictions of God. So in the shul, in the synagogue, you'll see Hebrew writing, you'll see the Aseret HaDibrot, you might see the lions of Judah. I'm pointing here because what the Aron HaKodesh here, again, you have the Ner Tamid, this eternal, everlasting light, but you'll see those there. And then we have the Yad. Now, the Yad is the finger pointer, okay? So you'll actually see it. And when we read the Torah, you're not supposed to touch the Torah, okay? Even with the Yad, sometimes you might think, because, if with the Yad, you can actually scratch the Torah. You can scratch it. So what you do is when you read the Torah, you actually hover the pointer over the Yad, the pointer over the text. And what does this mean, Yad? I'm sure when we lift the Torah, what do? Vezod HaTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei b'nei Yisrael al pi Adonai biyad. This Torah, this specific one, was the Torah that was given to Moses on Mount Sinai. So we use that as the Yad. Now, we want to cover and protect our Torah, so we have a mantle, the Torah cover. The Torah cover. And we're still, this is still Tishrei. So Tishrei is such a special time for us because all of the holidays, not all of them, we have many holidays in Judaism, but again, we have white. So we're still in the holiday season.
Rabbi, we have a question.
What is the question?
So coming from our very own streaming specialist, Judy, is there a standard size for a Torah?
Great question, our Vice President Judy. So the answer is there's no standard size for the Torah. However, when a sofer, when the scribe writes a Torah, all the Torahs have to have the same letters. They have to have the same amount of letters, and also when you turn the pages. So the Torah, it's not paper. We'll talk about it's cloth. It's written parchment. All the parchment pieces that are sewn together have to have the same lines on each sheets of the parchment and the same letters, the same amount of letters on each parchment. So that's the standard, but again, you can have a large Torah, you can have a small Torah, and again, a smaller Torah is actually a more expensive Torah. And the Torah, the person that makes the Torah is the kind of quote unquote the business is stam. And the stam is Sefer Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzot. So Tefillin, again, the phylacteries that are worn, and inside are also the cloth, the parchment, and also on a mezuzah. It's the same thing. So when you go to someone that has a stam business, again, a Sefer Torah, Tefillin, Mezuzot, they'll work with you and ask you what kind of Torah you're looking for. But yes, the standard is on each parchment, it has to have the same horizontal lines and the same number of letters. A great question. So we put this on the Torah, and again, we have if you donate a Torah, which is when you think about donating a Torah, it's also commanded. Here it's part of the Jewish law that when we go in to the land of Israel, eventually when we went into the land of Israel, we had Moses, we had Joshua. There was, when we think about kings in Judaism, all of a sudden the people said, the Israelites, we said, we need a king. We need a king to rule over us. One of the responsibilities of a king was to write a Sefer Torah. So maybe we'd have the king's name here, someone that donated the Torah. But I'm sure if you look in your congregations, you'll see that they were always donated for some type of cause or in a beloved person's memory. So we have, again, the Torah cover, the Torah mantle, and then to keep the Torah together, we have, in Yiddish we say this is a gartel, a belt. So we have that this is keeps the Torah together. So any questions about these items, what they're made out of? They're usually made out of silver, and the Torah is a very important item. So, and again, we have a small Torah here as well, so you can see we just have some a leather binding here for that the Torah is wrapped in. And again, this is a small Torah, and we keep all of the plural of Torahs in Hebrew is Sifrei Torahs, the books of Torah. So we have here a different yad, a much larger yad. So I'm going to put the talit on, and when someone comes up for an aliyah, they wear the prayer shawl, okay? So again, even if usually when we wear the prayer shawl, we don't wear it at night, maybe if you're leading a service, or again, the only other time we wear it at night is Kol Nidre. That's really what we happen for Yom Kippur. But we put on the Torah when we're going to the Torah, we put on the talit. So we have our talit out, and we can say the blessings, and we can even talk about the talit if you have any questions. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehitatef bad tzitzit. Amen.
Amen.
So now we have our talit on.
Thank you, Rabbi. And you also wear the talit on Friday nights for services because you are the service leader.
That's right. So if you're the service leader, you wear the talit. But again, anytime you're being called up for an aliyah, that we have the Torah. So are we ready to read from the Torah? I'm going to read from the Torah, and the Rebbitzin is going to translate what we're going to read, because we're going to read the last section of the Torah. Essentially, it's one really long run-on sentence. The Torah has no punctuation, okay? There's no punctuation in the Torah. So how do we know when to stop? That's important. So we actually use a tikkun, Likorim, which basically helps us here. I don't know if we can get a shot here. Can you do a zoom in here, maybe, of the tikkun that helps us, maybe? So, okay. So, but we have, and this book helps us because it has, on one side, it has all of the nikudot, all of the vowels, and also the punctuation, of course, not only the commas and the pauses, and how to pronounce the all of the words, but also exactly, where the paragraph starts and stops, okay?
Rabbi, we also have another question coming from Christy Roth. So you had indicated that we have our Ashkenazi-style Torahs here at Temple Beth David and our Sunrise Sanctuary. What does the Sephardi Torah scroll look like?
So a Sephardi Torah is interesting. It's the exact same Torah. The only difference is the construction on the outside. So this is, just to share with you, great question, that wherever you go around the world, the Sefer Torah, the Torah is the exact same. And not only that, but if you're reading the Torah and there's a mistake in the Torah, immediately you have to stop and almost replace it. Because it's called pasul. It means that it's incorrect. It's not valid. So the Sephardi Torahs, the difference, again, is how they're covered. They actually stand up. They're enclosed in a case, usually like a wood case, because it's not going to be so heavy, but people will carry it, they'll carry it on their right shoulder. And then when they put it down, the case opens. So here, here at Temple Beth David, our Torahs, we're going to lay them down. And so the idea is that this Torah would be opened like an actual ark. And then you'd have the rollers, the wood on top. Now the wood is actually called Eitzei Chaim, the trees of life. So that's what it's made with. And I don't know if we have the ability to get such a close-up of the Torah. But here we're in the end of the Torah. So I'll just describe what it looks like here. So we're in the end of the Torah, which is in V'zot HaBracha. The last word is Yisrael. But on this Torah, and this is quite a heavy Torah here, but again, you'll see that it's sewn together. The sinew here is all sewn together, the parchment pages. And it's written with saffras. And saffras is kind of this organic black ink. And the quill that is used to write the Torah has to also come from a kosher animal. So just as when we were building the first and second temple, the rabbis tell us that no metal instruments were used for building such a holy, instruments of war, metal, were used for building the holy temple. Also, when we put together the Sefer Torah, it's with all organic materials and matter. So the ink and the quill and everything that is used for writing. So I'm actually going to call myself up for an aliyah and an aliyah to the Torah, and then we're going to read a little bit of the last book of Deuteronomy. So again, we're going to keep the Torah closed out of respect. Ya'amod lekriyat Torah, Rav Yishai Mordechai ben Chaim v'Rivalea le'aliyah rishona. Baruchu et Adonai Hamvorach.
Baruch Adonai Amvarach Leolam Vaed.
Baruch Adonai Hamvorach Leolam Vaed. Baruch Ata Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher Bachar Banu Mikol Ha'amim Venatan Lanu et Torato. Baruch Ata Adonai Noten HaTorah. And now I'm going to open the Torah and I will say Amen. And we will start. The Rebbitzin will hold here. Okay. Vayil Moshe Morava Moab El Har Nevo Rosh HaPizga Asher Al Pnei Yericho Veru Adonai Et Kol Haaretz Et Hagilad Ad Dan Ve'et Kol Naftali Ve'et Eretz Ephraim U'Menashe Et Kol Eretz Yehuda Ad Hayam Ha'acharon Ve'et Hanegev Ve'et Hakikar B'Ka'ad Yericho Irat Murim Ad Sa'ar Ve'yomer Adonai Elav Zot Haaretz Asher Nishbati LaAvraham LeYitzchak VeLeYaakov Le'emor Lizroecha Ednena Hariton Beinecha V'Shama Lo Hevad V'Yimad Sham V'Yimad Moshe Sham Eved Adonai Be'eretz Moab Al Pi Adonai V'Kvor Et B'nei Haaretz Moab Mul Beit Paor V'lo Yada Ish Et Kvorato Ad Hayom Hazeh U'Moshe Ben Mevesrim Shana B'moto Lo Mitatchat Einav V'lo Nes Lechem V'Yivko B'nei Yisrael Et Moshe Baravad Moab 30 Yom V'Yamutu V'Yivi B'chi Aval Moshe V'Yoshua Ben Nun Mulo Ruach V'chochma ki samuch Moshe et yadav alav v'shimon alav b'nei Yisrael v'yasu ka'asher tziva Adonai et Moshe v'lo kam navi od b'Yisrael k'Moshe asher yadu Adonai panim el panim l'chol echad v'hamoftim asher shlechu Adonai la'asod me'eretz Mitzrayim l'faro l'chol avadav l'chol artzov l'chol hayad hachazaka l'chol hamorah hagadol asher shisha Asa Moshe Le'nei Kol Yisrael. Amen.
And to read the English of what Rabbi just chanted, this is the portion of the Torah where Moshe dies, and it is chapter 34 in the book of Devarim, the book of Deuteronomy. From the plains of Moab, Moses climbed up to Mount Nebo, to the top of Mount Pisgah, facing Jericho. Adonai showed him all the land of the Gilead as far as Dan, all of the land of Naphtali, all of the land of Ephraim and Manasseh, all of the land of Judah as far as the Mediterranean Sea, as far as the Negev, the Jordan Valley, and Jericho, the city of palm dates, as far as Zoar. Then Adonai said to him, "This is the land that I swore to give to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Rebekah, Rachel, Leah, and Sarah, saying, I will give it to your descendants. Now I have let you see it with your own eyes, but I will not allow you to cross the river and enter it." So Moses, Adonai's servant, at his command, died in the land of Moab. Adonai buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, near Beth Peor. No one, even to this day, knows the place where he was buried. Moses was 120 years old when he died, but his eyes were sharp and he was still strong and healthy. For 30 days the Israelites mourned Moses on the plains of Moab. When the mourning period for Moses came to an end, Joshua, son of Nun, acquired the spirit of wisdom because Moses had laid his hands on him. The Israelites listened to him and obeyed him exactly as they had obeyed Moses. There never was another prophet in Israel like Moses, whom Adonai knew face to face. No one else could have performed all the wonders and miracles that Adonai allowed Moses to perform before Pharaoh in the land of Egypt, or of any of the powerful miracles and awesome deeds that Moses performed before the eyes of all the Israelites. Each year, the entire Torah is read aloud in the synagogue. When it is completed, the members of our congregation stand up and recite.
And now we say together, because
So
we
in
just
spirit
finished.
or physically, however you're able to, please
Rebbetzin,
join
what
us.
do we say?
We are going to say Chazak, Chazak, Venit Chazek.
Chazak, chazak, venit chazek.
Be
Strong, be strong, and we will all be strengthened. And as the Rebbetzin mentioned, also today here, we, in one of our favorite songs, we, Yigdal, which we said yesterday, last night, we finished with Yigdal. We say, Lo kam beYisrael kamo she'od. No other prophet was in the land like Moses. That Moses was strong, that Moses saw into the land. Moses was 120 years old. Moses now is going to die. Yehoshua, the son of the fish. Here, did you know in Aramaic, Nun is fish? That Joshua, Yehoshua now is going to take over and lead everyone into the promised land. And the last word of the Torah is Yisrael, is Israel. But that's the end of the story. It's almost, it's a difficult thing because I also say, that's the end of the story? What happens when we go in? The whole Torah is preparing here. We just said that Moses was God's loyal servant, that Moses went to Pharaoh and said, right, I'm trying to do Roy Orbis, let my people go, right? We know the song. That's the end of the story. When I say that's the end of the story, what happened? Well, thank God we know what happened. We're here. And now we read the Torah. We read it again and again. And just as we finish the Torah, and that's what we just did right now, what do we do? When you have a good book sometimes, and it could be the best book, maybe what you do is you read the book and you finish it in the last chapter. And then all of a sudden you go, oh, it's an incredible book. And you put it back on your bookshelf. And then you don't revisit it. You say, that's it, I finished it. But no, with the Torah, it's different. We actually move from this Torah to this Torah. And now we're going to open it up shortly, and we're going to read Bereshit, Genesis. But first, we're going to have...
We have a question.
We have a question.
And this question comes from Jackie Roach. And Jackie writes, what is the age of the oldest Torah still around? Do we know, and where is it located? Perhaps in Yerushalayim.
It's a great question. I'm not sure what the oldest Torah is. They have different, that's the difficult thing, is that there's so many different types of texts of Torah. It's the same, but I don't know exactly what it could be. I'm not sure with Yerushalayim. Just to share with you, though, Jackie, it's a great question. It's not such an ancient and old Torah. The Torah is also, in order for them to survive, they have to be taken care of. And we're blessed here at Temple Beth David. We actually, I don't know if it can be seen, maybe if the camera can catch it, but over here on my left, here, we're trying. Jackie, it's important that we see this Torah. This Torah actually here is it's a numbered Torah, and it was saved. It survived the Holocaust, and so many Torahs were burned and destroyed. And so this Torah actually comes from Czechoslovakia. And so I don't know the oldest known Torah. I know that the Israeli technology has put a Torah like on a nanochip, the entire Torah. But the oldest Torah that is still in use or in a museum, I'm not sure, but this Torah is from Czechoslovakia, and then also in Prague, they have a museum of all different types of Judaica with old Sefer Torahs. Another question.
Actually, no, I just did a quick web search because that's a great question, Jackie. And what I found is on nationalgeographic.com, and I'll be putting the link in the chat, but it says carbon dating confirms world's oldest Torah scroll. This was back in 2013, so not sure if anything's been discovered since then, but this came up on just a preliminary search. And it shows that according to carbon dating technique, the Torah is 800 years old. It is Italian in origin, and it is currently held at the University of Bologna in Italy. So it dates back from approximately 1155 to 1225, somewhere in that range.
And again, when you think about Rome, it's interesting because, when you think about the destruction of the Second Temple in 70 CE, that's where the Israelites went, to Rome. And so that makes sense that it came from the land of Israel. to Rome. Do we have other questions? Rebbitzin, can you give us a nice song to transition?
I would love to. And since we talk about the Torah, I mean, it is Simchat Torah.
And we should dance with the Torah.
We have Reina. It looks like took my plush or her plush Torah, but that's okay. Rabbi's getting a Torah for us to dance with, and I will be singing Al Shlosha Devarim. So the world is sustained by three things: Torah, worship, and loving deeds. And the song goes Al Shlosha Devarim. Al Shlosha Devarim, Al Shlosha Devarim, Ha'olam Omed, Al HaTorah, Ve'al HaAvodah, Ve'al Gemilut Chasadim, Al HaTorah, Ve'al HaAvodah, Ve'al Gemilut Chasadim. And also, one of the songs that's specifically listed in our Mishkan Tefillah for the holiday of Sukkot, which has just ended, but it's completely applicable and appropriate for Simchat Torah, is a song you may all be familiar with. It can be found on page 664 in our Mishkan Tefillah. And it is Turn, 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 based on the book of Ecclesiastes, chapter 3, verses 1 through 8. So, to everything turn, turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, turn. And a time to every purpose under heaven. A time to be born, a time to die, a time to plant, a time to reap, a time to kill, a time to heal, a time to laugh, a time to weep. So I'm not going to sing the whole thing, but it's very applicable because just as Rabbi turns the Eitz Chaim every week to find the new Torah portion for the next Shabbat we enter.
I'm not going to sing
exactly
because
what he's doing.
and I'm not going to sing because I'm blessed with the Rebbitzin's beautiful voice, but also tonight not only the Rebbitzin but the Chazanit. So
thank you. And actually, just fun fact: my grandma, my Gammy, she reminded me that the first profession I had ever told her that I wanted to pursue was to be a chazanit. So my life led me to a rabbi, not quite to cantorial school, but who knows, there may still be time in my future to make this legitimate. But the passage from Ecclesiastes is very applicable in our world today. It talks about a time to build up, a time to break down, a time to dance, a time to mourn, a time to cast away stones, a time to gather them back together, a time for love. I don't necessarily agree with this part, but it says a time for hate. Maybe we'll say a time for respectful disagreement, a time of war, a time of peace, a time you may embrace. And this is truly, something
refrain
that...
from embracing.
Yeah, that is something, unfortunately, we have to do right now to stay safe and healthy.
6 feet.
At least.
At least.
And a mask. A time to gain, a time to lose, a time to rend, a time to sow, a time of love, again, a time of hate, a time for peace, and I swear it's not too late. So again, it is never too late. That's why we read the Torah every year anew, because we're looking at it from new eyes, new experiences, and we're just so glad to celebrate Simchat Torah, this joy of Torah, with all of you.
And when we talk about reading the Torah, this is interesting too. I don't want to misquote, but I don't know the exact quote. But the student goes to the rabbi, and the student says to the rabbi, "I've read the entire Torah. I know everything." And the rabbi responds, "Has the Torah gone through you? Has the Torah penetrated you? The words, to be a kind person, to be a person that shows love and respect and, can have a peaceful disagreement." And so we have to constantly, the ideas which we said, the blessing this morning, lasok b'divrei Torah, to be busy with words of Torah. And so therefore, when we immediately read, that Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses the rabbi, our rabbi, is going to die and not go into the promised land, I always want to say, ay, what's going on? This is the end? But then we immediately, the rabbis teach us, lafoch bo bekulaba, that we turn it, when we turn it, and everything's inside the Torah. So immediately we go from one Sefer Torah to the other Torah. And so now we're going to read something I'm sure that we're all familiar with, Bereshit. Genesis. So we have it here. We have the eight. Again, the wood spindles are called Eitz Chaim, which is the trees of life here. And then I have the Yad, because I'm not going to touch the Torah, because you don't want to, God forbid, smear or kind of make a marking on the cloth, on the parchment. So I'll read a little bit. Maybe we'll read day one.
That sounds perfect.
Day one, we'll read. All right. Bereshit bar Elohim et hashamayim ve'et haaretz va'aretz hayita tohu vavohu ve'choshech al panei atom ve'ruach Elohim merachefet al panei hamayim vayomer Elohim yihi or v'yihi or vayar Elohim et haor ki tov vayivdel Elohim ben haor uven hachoshech vayikra Elohim leor yom ve'lechoshech kara laila vayir vayivoker yom echad.
At the beginning, Elohim, I'm going to start a little earlier than Rabbi did, but at the beginning, Elohim created the cosmos, which included planet Earth, our Mother Earth. The earth was shapeless and empty, with darkness on the face of the waters, and life-giving winds from Elohim whooshed over the surface of the water. Elohim said, "Let there be light," and there was light. Elohim saw that the light was good, and Elohim separated the light from the darkness. Elohim called the light day, and called the darkness night. And there was evening, and there was morning, that very first day. So just as we had done with Havdalah, which means a separation, God separated the light from the dark, creating our rhythm of life.
And Elohim called this day, this evening, this separation, the first day. And again, as we read that, that's also the source text for what we're doing right now. Because you might say, Rabbi, what are you doing? It's like 8:30. Well, it's 8:07 at night. What are you doing? Celebrating a holiday at night? Yes, because all of the Jewish holidays, from that source text that I just read, that means the holidays, all of them, start the preceding evening, the night before the holidays start. So again, we have a small Torah here. This Torah, again, all the Torahs are holy. This Torah, again, is not I want to say it's not it's in parentheses or in it's not a kosher Torah. It's a mass-produced Torah. Again, it's still a very holy Torah. You'll see here in the center. I'm not sure if we can get a close-up here, but you'll see this is not the only one. Again, the second to last Torah portion, Ha'azinu, is the poem of Moses. But you'll see the markings. Where again, this one is Az Yashir Moshe, the song of Moses at the sea, when the Israelites are crossing over. But all different types of markings. And so when our Vice President Judy asked a great question, is there a standard? Well, the Eitz Chaim, the spindles and the size of the Torah, there's no standard size, but you'll see the markings, the words, the parshiot, the paragraphs, the stories, the chapters, those are standard, okay? And then usually when we roll the Torah and unroll it and we prepare it, those are the cues that we're going to pick up on as individuals, not necessarily rabbis, but people that are familiar with the Torah. Because if someone says, Rabbi, in Leviticus, or look in Sefer in Shmot and Vayikra, and any of these books, where is this story? To unroll the Torah actually goes around this entire room if we unroll the whole Torah. So it takes some time to find the place. Rebbetzin, do you have another song for us as we transition at the end of the Aliyah? Another song for us?
We always have more songs.
We always have more songs.
So this one is about spreading over us a shelter of peace from Hashem. So it's a pasuk, a verse from our prayers, and it goes, Ufros aleinu Sukkot, Sukkot, Shalom Echad, Ufros aleinu Sukkot, Shalomecha.
So again, if we have, does anyone have, again, please, this is informative. I hope it's informative. It's informative for all of us, but also it's not just a performance here. That please, you're part of our congregation. If you have questions, comments, when we think about the Torah, again, it's the holiest thing. We talk about to save a Sefer Torah, latzil, to rescue a Sefer Torah. Yes.
Okay, I just snuck up to the sign on the Holocaust Torah to answer Jackie's follow-up question. It doesn't say exactly what synagogue it came from, but it came from the town of Brno, B-R-N-O, and it was written in the 1800s. And I forgot the year from walking from the back to the front.
And it's a numbered, Jackie, a numbered, I think the number is on this plaque.
Number 127.
Number 127.
And it is one of 1,564 Torahs rescued from the destruction by the Nazis during World War II. And it was written in the year 1890.
And now we're going to have the blessing after the reading of the Torah. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu Torat emet v'chayei olam nata b'tochenu Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. And then I do have another song if you'd like.
Yes, please. This is our closing song, and this is the Sifrei Torahs are all in white, but we're going to be changing the Torahs back to the beautiful blue that we have, and because again the holiday season is really it's going to be. We're going to have Rosh Chodesh in just 2 weeks. We're going to be celebrating the next month. So let us have a beautiful song. What song are we singing?
So because the final word of the Torah
is Yisrael.
We're going to sing a song that's connected to Yisrael. What do we call Israel? What's another name for it? Let's see if I can quiz the rabbi. Let's see.
Zion.
Or
Yerusha. No.
Or Eretz
HaKodesh.
Eretz Zavat.
Zavat Chalav Udvash, the land of milk and date honey. Silan, date honey.
Exactly, and this is a very energetic song.
It's a folk song.
4 words to this song.
What are the 4 words?
Eretz,
land. Zavat,
Chalav.
Zavat means flowing. It's coming out. Chalav, milk.
Udvash,
and honey. Eretz. Repeat after me. Eretz. Zavat. Chalav. Udvash. All right, are we ready? Let's take it away.
And it goes, Eretz Zavat Chalav. Chalav Udvash. 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 So may we all have a year flowing with
milk and honey.
Proverbially.
Well, here, listen. Here we're blessed in Georgia, in North Georgia, and in Savannah. I was in Savannah. They got all kinds of delicious bee honey all over the place. So if it's bee honey or if it's date honey, whatever sweet things that we can enjoy. But as the Rebbitzin said, that we may we all be blessed with security, with safety, and really that it should be sweet. And not only should it be sweet, but here it's a story, a brief story. When children learn Torah, and the first things here, I'm sure there's a song that we sing, kind of by the hearth, Kometz Aleph On. It's a Yiddish song, Oifen Pripitchik. And I don't want to go off, but there's the song Oifen Pripitchik, and if you don't know the Yiddish song, it's a beautiful song. It's but the idea is it's at the hearth, and the student is learning, and the letters are there's so much power and wisdom, and our entire history of the Jewish people is encapsulated in these letters. But Bizman Hazeh, in this time, even when students study here at our Temple Beth David Religious School, when we're learning Aleph, we want to make sure that we give the students sweet treats. If they know Aleph and they know Bet and Gimel, all of the letters, because the letters are so important. It's a way to decode, all of life. It's a blueprint. The Torah is a blueprint. So even in this time period when little children are, it doesn't matter what age you are, if you want to study Torah, and here we teach Torah also, we teach Hebrew, we teach many things, is actually, we want it to be sweet. So traditionally, actually, parents take their children into the school, and the teacher sits with them, and they go over, the Aleph base, the Aleph Bet. And if the students, as they answer correctly the letters, the teacher actually rewards them with something sweet, because they want to make sure that, as a reminder, that Torah should always be sweet, should always be flowing like the land of milk and honey. We want to wish everyone Sei Gesund. We want to wish everyone to have a Shavua Tov, a Chag Sameach. Tomorrow, I know, again, tomorrow's also Simchat Torah. So if your people are doing car parades and all different types of things, but our Simchat Torah celebration, I hope that you enjoyed and you found informative. And I apologize because last year everybody was dancing when we were
We
here,
were able to unroll
and we
the
got to
entire
unroll the entire
Torah.
Torah, and we had people wearing gloves, and we were looking at it.
And we had flags.
And we had flags, and we were dancing around, and and maybe we be blessed that everyone should be blessed with health and happiness, and also that next year we can all come together in this beautiful sunrise sanctuary, and may we be blessed to dance with simcha, with such joy around with our Torah scrolls as a community, as a holy community, as a healthy and holy congregation.
Amen.
Amen. Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach.